Hi, everybody. Welcome to the Gotta Pop podcast. My name is Buddy Gott, and the topic of today's show is the Twisters movie, the classic movie Twister, and then the new film Twisters, which was just recently released. Joining me today, my guest is Candace Estelle, who is a podcaster and writer. Welcome to the show, Candace.
Hi, I'm so happy to be here. Thanks, buddy.
Oh, you're welcome. I thank you very much for being here. Candace had recently written a review that is on my plethoraPop.com website, which is part of Medium as well, about Twister. And I'm sorry, about Twisters, the new movie, but also talking
Oh,
about the original. Yeah, both. Yeah.
oh,
And then I also did the same thing. I wrote a review of the new movie. So I figured, why don't we talk about this on my podcast? So I'm so glad you're here to do that.
it's super excited because this is one of my favorite. Now it is a franchise,
It
but
is
I
a
mean,
franchise.
Twister technically is a top three film of mine. So getting to talk about tornadoes and having a good time couldn't be a couldn't be better.
And what's kind of neat for me right now is actually I had just looked out my window and I think there's going to be storms here. So I'm kind of
Mhm.
hoping I hear like gusting winds throughout this podcast. That would be kind of fun, you know?
It's raining for me, so it's kind of there. Have you
Wow, so the
ever
powers that
experienced
be
a
up there are
tornado?
setting the mood for this show. I love it.
Yes.
Yeah, or
Have you
wherever they
been in
are.
a tornado before?
I have not been in a tornado. You have been in a
Oh,
tornado?
yes. I grew up in Tornado Alley in the Bible Belt.
Oh, wow. That's
Yeah.
so you do have a real big connection to these films, unfortunately.
No, I love tornadoes. And I know that that's a really bananas thing to say, which is why when I tell people that I love natural disasters, I always like to preface it by saying, and I have been in almost all of them. Like, please, it's not a judgment. I've been through floods, blizzards, hurricanes, tornadoes.
Wow. How
I've
young were
yet to
you when
experience a
you
tsunami.
experienced your first tornado?
My first one, I mean, probably seven or eight. The one I remember the most, I was 11.
Oh, okay. Wow. That must have been pretty bad if you remember it that clearly. Yeah.
No,
No? Are we
it was
disappointed it wasn't
exciting.
worse? Is that what you're saying?
Okay, well, there's a weird way to like to phrase it so that it's very clear. I'm not okay with natural disasters in terms of hurting people or
No,
taking
of course.
property, but in terms of the majesty of Mother Nature, like it's fascinating to me, and it always has been. And so when the movie, watching the movie had already been out when that tornado hit, and I remember it because being 11, I can remember that just fine.
Yeah.
Um, my mother made me go back inside to go get our cat because she had my little sister in her arms, and she was
Um,
like, "You go get the cat." And now as an adult, I'm thinking, um, shouldn't have done that. Shouldn't have to go get the cat.
it's
I
making
should
me
not
think
have
of the
been there
first
for
movie
that.
with Helen Hunt's character with the little dog and
Yeah, but at least Toby would like come. Like a cat, you have to go find that guy. And like my cat heard all of the commotion and she was hiding like under a bed upstairs,
uh,
top floor. And I'm running around like not wearing shoes because you run out of the house, not wearing shoes. And I'm like, found her. She's angry because I'm holding her way too tight. So she's like, trying to get away. I'm like, I'm trying to save your life. Gosh, let me be a hero. Run back downstairs, get in the truck. And then the tornado didn't even hit our house. I mean, we'd had worse thunderstorms than what that tornado did in that area.
And isn't it funny how you do? I don't know if disappointment is the right proper word to use here, but I know there have been many times, even here in Delaware, when I was growing up and throughout my life, where there have been threats of hurricanes, and you get all prepped for it, and the weather might get a little rough, and it might turn into a bad storm, but there's a little tiny bit of disappointment that you didn't see things maybe how you do see them in the movies, that you like you said, I don't want anyone to get hurt. I don't want any there to be like massive destruction, but like again, like you said, you use the word majestic, and there's just something so incredible about those things, which is I think why they're so captivating for people.
I think you can equate it to like if you were going to go skydiving and you're all pumped and your adrenaline is running and you're like, this is going to be an epic story. And then you're in the plane and then the plane's like, never mind, we're gonna land instead, and you're gonna get out. And you're
That
like,
is a
what do
great
I do with this
comparison.
energy? I don't have a good story anymore. What was this? Just a private plane ride? That's I think that's what it is.
I think you're right. I think you're right. And we certainly are going to talk about the new movie. And I know people were interested in the new movie, but it's hard to talk about Twisters without talking about the movie that started it all, which was Twister, that came out in 1996. And I'm just going to cover some of the cast here for my audience. If you don't already know, it starred, unfortunately, the now late Bill Paxton and Helen Hunt, Jamie Gertz. Carrie Elways, and many others in smaller roles who actually grew into very big careers in Hollywood. And wow, what a great movie! You've been a fan of it for a long time, haven't you?
Yes, I have definitely seen this probably around 25 plus times.
Wow, that's a lot.
I have two notes when it comes to your casting, which I do think we shouldn't forget. Alan Ruck, who was
Yes.
made famous by Ferris Bueller, I think is probably what is his biggest catalyst. He's now in Succession and just fantastic. Or
Oh, I didn't realize he
Succession
was
is
in
over.
that. Wow.
He is, and he's bananas. You should watch it. It's amazing. But also the late great Philip Seymour Hoffman.
Yes. Yeah. Who played
Yeah.
Dusty in the movie?
Yes. Also, is it Carrie Elway? I always say Ewells.
Yeah, I said it. I think I said El Wes for years. I've most heard Elways. Isn't
Really?
it funny how you can see a name for years and not have it right? I've done that with so
No, when
many
you said that,
celebrities.
my brain just glitched and I was like, oh God.
Like,
Oh
what are you
man, I
saying
have
that
said his name out
wrong?
loud so much and on film.
Well, I mean, I might have it wrong, so but yeah, it's such a great cast, and yeah, along with Alan Ruck, there's he's not a household name, but the character who was with him the most is the character's name was Alan, played by an actor named Sean Whalen, who I've liked in a
Mhm.
lot of things. Have you ever seen That Thing You Do?
I don't think so.
Oh, okay, that's a great, great movie. And he played, for those who are fans of that movie, he played the one fan of the band The Wonders towards the beginning of the movie. And he's been a great supporting actor in many, many things, going on almost 30 years now. But yeah, a lot of good people in there. There's another guy too. He was a part of the crew of Joe and Bill's crew. The actor's name is Jeremy Davies, and he went on to a lot of other movies, including, well, I know him best from the television series Lost. He played a character on there named Dr.
He
Daniel
the one who
Faraday.
gets his head sliced? Is that him?
No, that's another guy
Okay.
who I can't remember his character name right now.
Me
But yeah,
neither, but he always reminds me of Fisher Stevens.
I
Like
can
I thought that
totally see that.
he
Yeah,
looks a lot like Fisher Stevens, but
yeah.
they're not the same people.
Yeah, I can't remember that actor's name, but actually, it's funny. Now, when you and I started talking about doing the show the other day, and even in my review, I had mentioned that I had not seen the original Twisters probably since the late 90s.
Hmm.
So I'm like, I need to watch this. So I went to see if it was available on one of the like 10 streaming services that I pay for. And of course, it wasn't. So I was going to go rent it from Amazon. And they had a deal, I guess, probably because the new movie is out, where you could buy it for like $6 or $7. So I'm like, okay, let me buy a digital copy of this. Watched it the other night. But when we were watching it, my wife and I kept pausing it because if you do that on Amazon, it'll show you the cast members on the screen and who they are.
Hmm.
And we were looking for the guy who got his head sliced. And it's a name I don't recognize. I can't even remember now, but that guy's done a ton of stuff too. I think this movie was such a launching pad for so many of the cast. You saw them
Hmm.
in so many things after the years. And of course, especially for Bill Paxton and Helen Hunt, they'd both been around for a long time by the time they had done Twisters. But their careers even, went in better directions afterward.
You've got a siren in the
I
background. This
do
is
have a
very
siren in the
Twister.
background. No, I don't think it's any because of any horrific storms or
No,
anything.
no, that's not the same type of siren, but
It's
we're
not.
getting
It's
the
not.
vibe. We're getting the
I
vibe.
I live just under a mile away from a hospital, so it is a
Oh,
frequent occurrence for me to hear sirens during my shows. So sorry about that, people who might have a fear of siren sounds.
oh, I think it's good ambiance, right?
I
It's
think you're right. Yeah, I
you're
think
in.
Yeah, exactly, exactly. So let's go back to Twister then. I'm so glad that I bought that movie because when I wrote the review of the new movie, Twisters, I said that I thought that I liked it even more than the original. And I
Hmm.
think part of the reason that I said that was because it had been over 20 years since I had seen the original. Now, I'm not going to say that I think one is necessarily better than the other. It's kind of an unfair, I think, to compare the two. When you look at one you've seen maybe up to a dozen times compared to one you've maybe just seen once. It might not be the fairest thing to compare them. But having said that, watching Twister again just blew me away. I had forgotten how much I loved it, how intense it was. Oh my goodness. My wife's there on the couch watching it. She'd seen it before too, but she's like, picking at her hands, and I was like grabbing a hold of the arm of the. I was like, even though I know what's going to happen, it's just so beautifully filmed and so cleverly filmed, and it's just an intense movie that has held up very, very well since 1996.
Oh, absolutely. For me, I've seen it quite a bit. I used to move a lot as a child. I went to 13 different schools,
Oh my.
and for some reason our family tradition was the very first thing we would do once we moved into a place, the couch would get put in the right place, the TV would immediately get put in the right place, and we would put Twister on, be it a VHS, which turned into DVD, which turned into a Blu-ray, and then get pizza, and that was the first thing we'd always do,
Oh
and
wow,
I
what a great
continued that.
tradition.
Right, and I continued that as an adult, and I wrote this in my article, which was that I didn't realize that I stopped doing the tradition, after Bill Paxton passed away.
Oh, okay.
I hadn't been able to watch the movie again since he had passed away, and I think it was more subconscious. It was just like I'd move and I'd remember that that was the tradition. That's what I should do, and I
Mhm.
immediately would just be like,
Yeah,
later, later," and
I
then
get it.
it
Yeah.
and it kind of was, too difficult, and so for me, when I saw Twisters, which we'll wait to really get into, but I saw it, and then I came home, and I wrote the article, and my last line in our article is I say, "I'm gonna go pop on Twister now."
Mhm.
And I did,
Yeah,
and it's
you
the
did.
first time I've seen it since 2017. Now for me, it's not intense or, because 'cause I've seen it so much, you're not surprising me at all. But what I will say is that it felt like when you go to these, like, fan favorite movies, like, I don't know if you've ever been to a midnight showing of what's the one with Tim Curry? Rocky
Uh,
Horror Picture
Rocky
Show?
Horror, and I did that about
Where
25 times. Yeah.
yeah, where everybody's so insane. I actually had to leave because I've never seen the movie, and
Mhm.
so I was trying with one of these nights, and I couldn't hear anything that was going on. I had no idea what was happening in the movie. So I was like, "I don't know what's even going on." And that's kind of how watching Twister was for me. I was so glad that I was alone because we're coming in and the first tornado happens, and I was a little fuzzy. I kind of thought it was Toby's fault that Joe's dad died. I thought that Toby, like, comes to the door and her dad opens it, Toby gets in, and then he gets knocked away.
I thought the same thing when I was
Yeah.
watching it.
And I remember thinking, "What a horrible thing. Joe will never have a dog again. It's not the dog's fault." I also really loved, like, recognizing the parallel of, like, it being a Yorkie, like Toto
Yes,
was in The
like
Wizard of
Toto in The
Oz.
Wizard of Oz.
Yes.
Yeah, good call.
Because we also have Dorothy, and so I thought, "Oh, what a
Mhm.
wonderful callback," and so when Toby the door opens and I was like, "Well, he's about to die," and then he didn't, and I was like, "What?" And then I was like, "Oh, that's right, it's the door's fault, not the dog." And then, I'm sitting there and I'm like, "Just let the door go. Let the door go and run down. Run down the staircase and just go in the corner like your family is. Everyone else ends up fine. What are you
Isn't it
doing?"
isn't it funny the way we react when we watch movies, even if we've seen them before? Because my wife and I were doing the same thing. My wife Lisa. She was yelling at the screen. It's like to Joe's mother, saying, "Why don't you go help him? Pull the door down. Pull the door down."
I don't think that would have helped. I
No.
because if just not because the weight would have helped, but if you watch, the door splinters from the center as
Yes, you're
well.
right. Yeah.
They just needed to get away from that. It was not hanging out. There was no reason to hold on to that handle because it was all none of it wanted to be a part of the cellar anymore, It wanted
That's a
freedom.
very
It
good
was
way to put
out.
it there, Candace.
And yeah, so for me, that was really ridiculous. But like the whole movie, I'm quoting pieces,
Hmm.
I'm laughing my butt off, or like
There's a
some
lot
of
of
the
funny stuff in there, a lot of
oh,
funny
so
lines
much.
and
I
scenes.
mean, We Got Cows is the best thing that could possibly have happened on film, in my opinion.
Was that Jamie Gertz saying that,
Well,
or
so it's Jamie Gertz with Helen Hunt because Bill is driving and Helen goes, "Cow," and Jamie Gertz is on the phone with her client who is worried about having only been married for his, genitals, and
oh my gosh,
she's
that's right.
trying yeah, and she's trying to, like, talk him and the wife through and being like, "No, she didn't marry you for your genitals. And then you hear that one beat and she goes, okay, she didn't only marry you for your genitals. And there's a freaking tornado right there. And Helen Hunt goes, Cal, or I think Bill might even say Cal. And then the cow goes back and Helen goes, another cow? And Bill goes, I think that's the same cow. And that's when Jamie
It's
Gertz
such a
goes,
great line.
I gotta go. We've got cows. And I was like, it's so out of context, but the perfect way to end a phone call forever, forever. Or like this podcast. That's how we should end it. We
That's how
got
we should
cows.
end it. Yeah, I might just
Yeah,
do that with every episode, even if it has nothing to do.
forever.
Yeah,
It
I could
doesn't
be
matter.
talking
That's
about the
what pop
band
culture is
AC/DC, and I'd
about.
be like, "Hey, we got cows. Gotta
We
go."
got cows.
That'd be a great name for a podcast.
We got cows.
We got cows.
Do you just eat a different beef dish every single episode?
Ah, well, I see us doing a spin-off series here, Candace.
All right. I got barbacoa. What are you going to make?
I'm gonna order something. I can't make
There you
anything.
go. Oh my gosh.
But we mentioned Jamie Gertz. She's very good in the movie. I've been a fan of Jamie Gertz since she started doing things in the early '80s. She was on a TV show called Square Pegs, and she had done I think she was in a couple of the Brat Pack movies. But oh yeah, she was in The Lost Boys. Have you ever seen The Lost Boys?
Of course. Yeah.
Yeah, she was and she was very very good in this movie. She was kind of she's someone who initially you probably think you don't want to like her because she is the fiance of Bill Paxton's character, and automatically in this kind of movie you want Bill Paxton and Helen Hunt to be together. So you probably think, okay, we're going to hate Jamie Gertz, but really she's not a hateable character. She was very
She's not.
no, she's very good in this role and an excellent character. There's so many good characters in here. We mentioned Carrie Elways, however.
Wesley.
Wesley, perfect. That's the best way to describe him because that's who he will always be for so
Yeah.
many of us from the
Or the
fantastic.
Pirate Roberts, if you're really in the know.
That would be a good movie to do.
You can choose either one. It's as you wish.
Yeah, as you wish. Yes. God, I love The Princess Bride. Yeah, he's such a great bad guy in this as Jonas, and
He's such
yeah,
a jerk.
yeah, he's such a jerk. And gosh, like just so many great characters. I don't know where to go next with this because I'm looking at the list of the actors in this and the roles they played. And let's go
I'll
to Philip
assist.
Seymour.
I'll assist because for me, I was going to say it's Philip Seymour Hoffman. It's Dusty.
Yeah,
He's even credited as Dustin. And I was like, we call him Dusty the whole way through.
yeah, exactly.
He's a friend. And I think when films and when writers give a character like a nickname, especially when it's a warm, fuzzy nickname right away, like
Mhm.
you automatically feel like you're friends with that character,
Yes, I think you're right. I think you're right.
it builds a kinship immediately. So, and Dusty's got some of the absolute best lines. I mean, he has to explain to Melissa, which is Jamie Gertz's character, the suck zone. And you can see that he's got such a love for Aunt Meg, which is Joe's aunt. She even makes him extra food out of everyone, all 8 of them. And he's who gets like 2
Does
extra doggy bags.
exactly. She
And
does it for
he's
Dusty.
this, yeah, he's this heart without having to be really like overzealous and like really in a lot of scenes. But I mean, his absolute best line is losers move on because he's
Yeah.
standing outside of the Jonas caravan and they are late to the party and he goes, losers move on, and they're just like,
Nice impression of Philip Seymour Hoffman.
oh
There.
yes, thank you. I hope he
Fantastic.
appreciates it from beyond.
I'm sure he does. I hear
Yeah.
he's a fan of the show. But yeah, he was fantastic, and he's sort of like a hippie type, like whoa, yeah. But then he's like so extravagant too. It's just this great mixture of different things within him. And I may be wrong, but I think it's probably the first movie I ever saw him in, or at least was really aware of him in. I could be wrong on
It
that.
certainly is for me.
Yeah.
It's definitely the first thing I remember him in. Now I wouldn't agree with you hippie wise. I would say that is a surfer dude. That guy,
No, that's a
like
better description. You're
that
right.
guy
It's more of a
is
surfer dude.
stoned. He's always eating snacks. Nothing's bothering him.
Yeah, yeah, good call, good call. Maybe some of his clothing was hippie-esque, but I think you're
Yeah.
right. More of like the surfer type. Yeah,
Mhm.
very very much so. And yeah, he was just so good in it. I think the next thing I was aware of Philip Seymour Hoffman in where his performance really struck me may have been Boogie Nights, which I think came out just a few years after this one. But
Mhm.
he was such a good actor, and unfortunately, he left us entirely too soon. What a great talent he was.
He was very talented, and I just feel like very often talent and mental health are kind of like dueling each other,
Yeah,
especially when it comes to the arts, especially when it comes to that demographic. I think now we're hitting a point where we're able to give ourselves grace and be a little more kind to each other. And I think around the time when he was really coming up, that was all about like hit the hit the pavement, got to do it, got to be perfect, got to do the
yeah,
best. And it's coping however you can cope. And for him, I believe it was substances, and
yeah. Unfortunately, yes.
it's just not a great way to cope for
Yeah,
anyone.
yeah, and like you said, you unfortunately have seen we've all seen it so much with artists that we have loved. You think of someone like a Robin Williams, who he certainly had his struggles. I know with drugs and different things, and so
Well,
so
and
many
his
people, so
his
many people
bigger
in your
one was a mental. He had dementia. He was literally losing his
yeah,
mind.
yeah, yeah. That's true. I mean, he was boy, just that was such a loss. Yeah, and of course, Philip Seymour Hoffman was such a loss as well.
Well, I mean, Robin Williams was probably it was the second Hollywood death ever that like really like knocked me over. The first one being Steve Irwin, and
Oh
then
yeah,
for
yeah, that was
me
horrible.
personally,
Yeah.
but Robin Williams, his birthday was yesterday. It would have been his
Oh,
73rd.
oh wow, wow! I remember at the time of his passing, I had hosted another show back then. It was called Sunday Night Fiction Club, where we had a group that got together every Sunday and we just talked about random things in pop culture. We did it live; it was a lot of fun. But we did a whole episode devoted to Robin at the time, just talking about our favorite movies of him. And he was so versatile as an actor. He was great, of course, at playing comedic roles, but he was so good at drama as well. And
Hmm.
just such a talented actor. And yeah, I wish both him and Philip Seymour Hoffman were still around.
Oh,
And
absolutely.
yeah,
We should do a different episode and only talk about Robin Williams because we could do it forever.
we could. All right. Well,
Yeah.
we're not, folks. We're not going to stray too far away from these
Yeah,
twisters.
no,
But
I was this we gotta go back.
well, we're gonna stay on Robin for just a few more seconds. Do you have
Okay.
off the top of your head one favorite Robin Williams movie?
Oh, it's Flubber.
I've never seen it.
I loved Flubber so much as a kid.
That was a
I tried
great.
to make it.
Oh, I should. It sounds like I need to rent Flubber.
It's really I don't know if it's good as an adult. Like it's one of those things where when you watch it as a child and it's like he was squeaking around and Flubber was like his best friend and I was a lonely kid. So I was just like I tried to make a friend and I tried to make Flubber and I got in trouble because I stole borax from the science lab because that was the thing you used to make slime. It was the whole thing. So like, yeah, for me it was Flubber.
I think you ought to recreate that online. Try to make another flubber and do a
There's
video.
so many slime friggin' channels. It's driving me insane.
Is there
Although
really?
there are so many. I don't know why I get served them where they're like, "Are you interested in this?" And I'm like, "How do you know about my
We heard
deep-seated
about you
love
as
of
a child,
flubber?"
Candace.
Like you're reading my thoughts now because I don't talk about flubber usually. I keep that in my soul. I would say flubber is really good, but to balance that out, I think he did an excellent job in Patch Adams. But I really enjoyed him in is it Good Morning Vietnam?
Oh yeah, good
That
one.
I watched it last year before I went to Vietnam because I was really getting into the spirit of it. So seeing him in that role, I was just like, "Oh, okay." I also just watched him in a movie where he was a serial killer,
Oh,
in an
I'm aware of
Alaskan
that,
town.
but I've never seen it.
It's one of those things where the plot is very predictable, you know exactly what's happening. You also know he's the bad guy from the beginning, so I didn't give anything away, although it's 20 years old, so.
Right.
Um, but that's the only thing where I didn't like watching him in that movie, and I think it was because he was too much of a villain, and I was like, "No, it's not the
You
memory I
Robin.
will keep." Yeah.
Yeah, he was so great. And I'll just say real quick, one that I absolutely love, and a lot of people are on the fence about this one, is Hook. I'm a
I
big fan.
love Hook.
Isn't Hook great? A lot of people will
It's one of my
slam it.
favorites as a child.
He's excellent in that. Excellent in
Oh
that.
my god, I love
We
that
might
the
have to do a
whole
Hook episode. I don't know.
okay. I think I own it like on DVD somewhere back here. Absolutely. Hook was one of my favorites as a kid when he did the eating scene.
Oh, with all the kids? Yeah.
Yes.
Oh, that
Oh,
was
there's a
fantastic.
phrase that came out of that that I like used to say all the time, and then it popped off again about 5 years ago. And I remember being like, whoa. And
It's
now I can't
so
even think of
good.
it.
Yeah, I remember him
If you
like
remember what it is in the comments, what's the phrase that they all say on Lost Boy
is it when
Island?
he challenges Rubio and he like throws food at Rubio? I'm not sure. I might have to
Yeah, but
Yeah.
Rufio is who has the catchphrase.
Oh,
And
oh,
then like
oh, okay.
all of the Lost Boys have the catchphrase. I actually have a book.
Batarang, Batarang, or
Bangarang. Yeah, that's
Bangarang.
what
That's it. I
it
was
is. That's
close.
what it is. Ah,
Bangarang.
yes. And then he ends up
Which would
saying it towards
also be
the
the
end.
good name of a podcast. Bangarang.
Bangarang. I don't know what that would be about, like phone
I don't
sex.
know.
Um,
That could be bad, I guess.
but yeah, no, I love there's I mean, Mrs. Doubtfire, it's great.
Yeah.
Although if you think about it, he is kind of a villain, like from a
Hmm.
modern view.
Yeah,
But
true.
he's one of those actors that like brought so much warmth and love and light, you know?
Yeah, exactly.
And
I think you're right.
yeah,
And I
miss him a
think,
ton.
gosh, it's so much different too because he was never quite at the peak of fame as Robin Williams. But I would say the same for Bill Paxton. Bill Paxton, I think, was a very beloved actor because he
Oh
did a
yeah.
lot of different kinds of things. One of the first things, now you probably are not aware of this. Have you ever heard of the song Fish Heads? It's a really
I don't think
silly,
so.
a very silly song from the late 70s, but one of the first things that Bill Paxton, I want you to look this up later if you've got some time to
The
kill.
music video he was in.
Yeah, he was in the music video. I think he may have also directed it. I'm not sure about that. But yeah, that was the first thing I think that Bill Paxton did that became famous before he was even in movies so much. And he played like this goofy, quirky character in that. And in the music video, which is just so absurd and it's so much fun. But his career was sort of like that too, because then he was in Weird Science not too
I was
long
about to say
after that.
Weird Science is the it's not technically the first thing I remember him from because I
Yeah,
remember Twister more because
mhm,
everything was out at that point.
yeah.
But Weird Science chronologically is the first thing I know him from.
Yeah, and I think that may have been the first thing too that I was aware of this guy. Who is this guy? And then I'm like, oh yeah, it's the guy from Fish Heads. But yeah, he played that quirky character, and of course went on to things like iconic movies like Apollo 13 with Tom Hanks, and
There's
just so many great movies.
Titanic. He's in the Titanic.
Oh gosh, that's right. I forgot he was in Titanic. He
Yeah.
is the one that leads the sub that goes down to view the
The
Titanic.
excavation team, which by
Yeah.
the way, stop trying to excavate the Titanic, you guys. It's not going well. Cut it out.
Yeah.
Yep. He's in Titanic, Twister. There's something else that I went through his filmography when I was writing the article, and kind of just reminiscing. And there's something else because I know a lot of people ended up knowing him for California, no, Big Love.
Oh gosh,
Um,
yeah. I never saw that.
I never saw it either. I was definitely a child still, I think, when it was on. And that's not, it's about polygamy for anyone who doesn't know. So that's not something you watch as a child. And then there's so much content, it's hard to go back a lot of times. Um, but I know that there's another movie that he was in that this is such an offshoot movie too. But are you ready for it? The one I love it as an
Lay it on me.
adrenaline junkie, Vertical Limit.
I'm not sure I've ever seen Vertical Limit.
Okay, well, you should write it down, make a note. It's about this like yeah, okay. It's
There's some
about
limitations with verticalness or something.
no, no, no. No, there's no limitations. That's the problem. The
Oh,
limit does not exist, buddy.
oh my.
It's it's rock climbers, and I lived in Texas for a good portion of my life, and then I lived in Colorado for even more of my life. So almost a good 50-50 split for a little while. So I grew up like country kid, tornadoes, floods, thunderstorms, and then traded that for like blizzards and rock climbing. So I really love extreme like rock climbing and all of that stuff.
Yeah, I could see how
Um,
that could happen. Yeah.
yeah, I love rock climbing. I like being up high. And so Vertical Limit was about this woman who was a rock climber, and then she lost her team while rock climbing, as one does.
Yeah,
That's the
it
first
happens.
few
Yeah.
minutes where everybody falls, like the carabiners come out of the rocks, just the worst thing that could happen. Everyone falls out, but she ends up not falling off,
Oh,
and then she stops. And then of course there's like there's the climb of a lifetime and it's in the mountains and she's got to come back because the only one who can do it. And I'm pretty sure that Bill Paxton is the foil in this one.
Oh.
He's the villain, as far as I can remember.
Oh,
That's why I was trying
wow.
to remember because I always think of him as a good guy, but I'm pretty
Yeah.
sure he's not in this movie. He's like a megalomaniac billionaire who's out there to, show off, and she's one of
Okay.
his guides. And the movie is basically about her and her brother, and she goes out there to do it, and things start going kind of haywire.
Wow, it sounds like a really good one. I mean, I'm looking it up right now because I'm curious about this, and it looks like, yeah, it looks like it had a pretty good cast in there. I see like Scott Glenn, Chris O'Donnell, yeah, Bill
Hmm.
Paxton,
I
Robin
think Chris
Tunney.
O'Donnell plays the brother.
Oh, okay. It sounds like a good movie. I
It's fun.
don't know
And
how I
here's
missed
the
that one.
thing is like I'm one of those people who I can enjoy basically anything.
Hmm.
You
That's kind of
know,
how I am
like
too.
yeah, like a shark movie, absolutely sign me up. Can't wait for it. Like I so sometimes I have a hard time because I try not to say movies are good when I know that they were very fun.
Hmm.
And so I will
Yes.
say that Vertical Limit is fun and it's adrenaline inducing. And I
Okay.
loved rock climbing even as a kid. So for me, I was just like, I could do that. Like all of this dangerous crap is happening. And I'm just like, yeah, I love it. A little reckless, but it is what it is.
Well, I'm gonna have to check that one out, especially if Bill Paxton played sort of like a villain in that. I'm intrigued,
Yeah.
you know. And let's talk about his co-lead in this movie, and that's Helen Hunt. I thought she was fantastic in Twister. I've always
She
liked
is.
Helen. I'm kind of
She's
surprised. It's hard to say that she didn't go on to bigger things, but I'm kind of surprised her movie career didn't stay as popular as it was back then. I mean, she's such a talented actress, and of course, she's gone on to other things, and she was, of course, in the Mad About You television series too. I think that might have been right before or at the same time as Twister, but I liked Hunt a lot in the movie.
I think I think it's probably at the exact same time because there is one episode of Friends in, I want to say probably around 94 to 96,
Hmm.
where they have the Mad About You cast appear in one episode of Friends as their characters. And
I
I think
remember
that
this.
that's around 94 or
Okay,
95.
yeah,
So I think Mad About You is at the same
at
time.
the same
But then
time.
I think, so for me, Helen Hunt is Joe. And then isn't she in What Women Want?
Yes, yeah, she was
And
Mel
then
Gibson's love interest in that, or one of his
yes,
love interests in that.
the
The
main
main one,
sweet.
yes.
And then she's also in a rom-com with Jack Nicholson.
Yes, as good as it gets.
Yes.
Yeah,
And
which was a great movie.
I feel like that's it. That's the last thing I
Yeah,
remember seeing her in. And you know what? Maybe she hit what she needed to hit and she just gets to hang out now, you
yeah,
know?
maybe. Now,
I
I
have
don't know
no
if you.
idea.
Yeah, now I had when I was doing research on the new movie on Twisters, which we'll get to shortly. I had seen that apparently over the years there had been multiple plans to do a sequel
Yep.
to Twister, and one of the more recent ones was the fact that I think she had offered to the film production company to direct and star in a sequel. And I don't know if she had come up with a plot for it too, but that ultimately, of course, did not happen. But that would have been another interesting take on things.
Well, I know that I don't know if she wanted to star in it because the plot she wanted was that it was going to be a research team at a primarily or traditionally Black college and for
Oh,
it to all be a Black cast of like scientists.
oh, that part I was unaware of. Wow.
And yeah, that's what never came off the ground. So, as far as I'm aware, I think that's one of the reasons she doesn't appear in Twisters
Oh, okay.
because
And
that wasn't the vision.
wow. And I had heard too that one of the more recent, that's very interesting. What, golly. I can't believe I just said golly. All right. Anyway,
I like it.
I'm a nerd. My regular audience knows this already.
I was
There's a
gonna start
lot of
doing my
sirens. Can you hear
transatlantic
it?
voice. Yeah, I like it though. But like I told you, it's perfect ambiance, and like for me, the it's getting really gray because of the rain. So it's good. Although I can tell you, as someone who used to grow up where there were, some tornadoes, is like it's a very different type of sky. It's a green gray. Like it's
Oh,
like,
interesting.
and then all of a sudden it'll be oddly just quiet because when you grow up in the Texas Hill Country, crickets nonstop. Like they've
Oh, wow.
always got something to say, always, you know?
They
So
can be
there's
quite
never
annoying, those
quiet.
crickets.
And I bet this year it's going to be bananas with the double cicadas that have
Yeah.
popped up. Like I've heard that it's been
NAS
insane.
bananas. Yes.
Hmm. And so it's one of those things, but like you'd always hear it, and then you knew something was about to happen because it would be dead quiet, and you'd just be like, oh, that like calm before the storm thing is
Hmm.
absolutely, it's a real trope. That's why when it would happen in the film, I would be like, something's coming.
And I
It's
was
too
really struck
quiet.
by I was really struck by that in the movies. Watching them both in over this past week. Just how quiet it would be, like directly after there was a big hit, or like you said, directly before. And I know my wife and I kept turning to each other saying, we're glad we live in Delaware and we don't have to deal with these. I know they can happen anywhere, but I think I've seen like 2 tornadoes hit this area in my entire life, which is, I don't know, at least 25, 30 years long. Maybe a little longer. Anyway, what I was going to say before was that I had seen that one of the other things that was proposed not too long ago for Twisters was having Helen Hunt's character of Joe be in it, but to be the mother of Daisy Edgar Jones, the star, one of the stars of the new
But I
movie.
wanted.
Yeah, yeah, and I wasn't sure. I don't want to give away too much, folks, but Helen Hunt is not in this new movie, so her character Joe is not in it. But apparently, that was in the original script, or at least the original presentation to the film company, where they were going to have her be the daughter of Joe from the first movie. That would have been great. I wonder if Helen Hunt
Was
didn't
that
want to do
part
it.
of it? Because the writer made it very clear, like in a couple articles, which by the way, he wrote before the movie came out, so
Hmm.
we didn't spoil anything.
Right.
Where he's very clear on the fact that like this is a standalone sequel,
Hmm.
and that's why they didn't have any previous cast members. And I just assumed it was because it wasn't the vision Helen Hunt wanted that
Yeah.
she chose not to come back. Because I
That could
really,
be part. I haven't heard all the details of it, but.
you need the juicy goss.
I do. I do. I'm going to call Helen Hunt after this.
Hmm.
I mean,
Ask for her
she hasn't
feelings.
really returned any of my calls, like since I had a crush on her in the '80s. So she's
Well, she
probably not
hasn't
going to
been
call.
very busy. So
That's true. The revival of Mad About You didn't really take off. No offense, Helen, but
did they try to revive that show?
they actually did. I think they did a limited run return to it where it was maybe, I don't know how many episodes, so I would just be making a number up right now. So we'll say
8.
75. Yeah, either 8 or 75. I don't know. It's somewhere in between there.
It's
But
between
yeah, they
there.
brought it back on some, I want to say some sort of obscure streaming service or cable network. And then I think since then, maybe Hulu picked it up or something like that. But I missed it at the time, and to me, I was kind of surprised it didn't get more attention because "Mad About You" was popular. I mean, that was a really incredibly pop. It was pop. I'm not saying it was one of my favorites, but it had its audience.
I
But
feel like it
anyway,
was
yeah, she
just as
hasn't done a lot.
popular as like Dharma and Greg.
Well, I'm sorry, did you say it wasn't as popular as Darman?
No, I say I think it was like on the same level.
Yeah, I think so. It had its following, but it was
Yeah.
never like up there at the level of like say a Friends from the same time period.
Well, nothing is, but like so. Oh, Will and Grace.
Yeah, are you a Friends fan?
Oh, please.
Boy, that'd be a binge watch.
It's not actually. It'll only take you about 2 weeks because they're half an hour and
But
10
still
seasons.
binging. Oh
Well,
yeah, we're
I've
gonna
done
talk
some
momentarily,
marathons.
folks, about what she binged for her podcast.
Oh yeah. Well, my podcast is called the Binge It Babe podcast.
Love that title.
Yeah, I'm a real big fan of alliteration. And so when I got the title, I literally could not decide on anything else because I was like, well, no, but the alliteration is here. Because
Yeah,
I
yeah.
was a little bit nervous because binge can have a negative connotation. But
Hmm.
I did kind of look it up. And I think colloquially and in this like zeitgeist we have now, it is it is acceptable to say binge watching.
Yeah,
It's Netflix campaigns and everything. So for me, I was like, you know what, it's okay. It can
yeah.
have this negative piece and it can also have this more fun piece, um
I would
which is
think
how
that
I
most
take
people
it.
view it in more of a fun way now because it's something people even do together. They'll have binging parties and watching
Hmm.
shows that they love and or movies.
Yes, me and my cat binge like crazy, but she does not have the same taste as me.
Well, since we're talking about your podcast, so let's just say what you just binged for it
Oh, well,
originally. I
my
know you've done a couple things.
yes, so the original the original binge was Supernatural. which is 15 seasons. It's 327 episodes.
I would be
They're
so
hour long.
intimidated by that.
It was 2 months because they're technically hour-long episodes, but I don't have the commercials at this point, so 45 minutes. So I believe it took me 640-ish hours to watch it.
Wow. Wow.
It was a commitment. And on top of that, like I try to have, the notes and enough information about it.
Mhm.
But by the time I finished it, I could barely remember like the details from the first,
Oh,
couple of
well, yeah, I
episodes.
think anyone would struggle with that, Candace. That's a lot of episodes and hours and
Things got muddied where I was like, I think something this happens. And then I'd go, wait, no, that's 2 seasons ago. And I was just like,
now
but
what
you
was
get the gist.
while doing this, what would be like the longest or at least one of the longest stretches you had where it took up like your entire day or an entire weekend? I guess it had to have been a lot of that, huh? Where you spent like
It
maybe
was
10
all of
hours.
that.
Yeah.
All of that. So I started the binge right before I had some friends visit me from out of town. And when they were here, I was thinking, oh, I'll probably only get, an episode or two out. And one of my friends actually was so sick that she coughed a hole into her lung, like a rip.
Oh
And
my.
so she couldn't fly back home.
Oh,
And
wow.
she couldn't really do anything. Like we couldn't even really take a walk together because she would get winded while this was healing. And so the doctor was like, you can't fly for 2 more weeks. So she was with me for 3 weeks. And for the full 2 weeks that she was there, we watched Supernatural from the time she woke up until we went to sleep.
Oh my
And
gosh.
like I'm an early riser, she's a later riser. So I would watch the episodes that she would watch after I fell asleep. And so I'm watching this show from the moment I wake up until I pass out. I was passing out on my yoga mat because I was letting her sit on, like, lay on my couch while we're watching. So I'm asleep on my yoga mat for at least 4 or 5 episodes that she would watch, which is 4 or 5 more, about 4 hours more. Then I would watch that in the morning to be caught up and,
Oh, wow. Now,
so
were
at
these
least
episodes brand new to you, or did you watch it when it aired as well?
I did not watch it when I aired,
Oh,
but
okay.
it
So,
also was not fully brand new to me, which is bizarre. I've actually watched Supernatural twice in a row, basically.
oh my.
The very first time I watched the show ever was in February.
Oh,
Um,
February of this
yeah,
year.
yes.
And you've done
I went,
hundreds and hundreds of hours of it since then.
yeah,
My goodness.
twice.
Twice,
Yeah. So
yeah.
I went through the whole thing. I literally went through the whole thing when I was still putting together the concept of the podcast. And then I thought, that would have been really good for the podcast. So I had to redo it so that I could
Right.
remember things better.
Yeah.
And the
No,
entire
I
time I
totally
was
get that.
like, yeah, the whole time I was like, I'm going to take notes. I never took any notes while I was watching it. I'm focused on what's going on. I mean, there's demons, there's vampires, there's stakes, and I have to be there to be like, don't do that. Or now I've seen it once, so I would be like, that was a stupid decision that you're making. Let me tell you that that's going to bother you for the next 10 years because I've seen your future, sir. So it was one of those
That's
things.
hilarious.
It was a lot. And for my podcast, I tell my audience, my future audience, I'm like, please tell me what you want me to binge. I'd like to start seeing new things. And in the meantime, I will do episodes of stuff like that I'm more familiar with so that I can really have that passion and that point of view. So obviously I did Twister and Twisters, which I was like, if someone could argue that's not technically a binge, but now that there's more than the one movie, it's about 4 hours of content. That's
Yeah,
enough, right?
it is. I would say so.
Um, yeah, and I did it back to back. Plus, I saw Twisters twice in theaters so that I could take the notes the second
I was
round
going
and
to
take.
ask you if you ended up seeing it a second time.
I did, yes. I went back just for one because I had so much fun the first
Mhm.
time, but also because, like I said, I wanted to take notes. So I went for like a showing where no one else would be there again, so that I could like be on
Oh,
my
you
phone
literally
without
took notes while you were watching. Okay.
it.
Wow.
I needed to
Well,
because
I
my
can
notes are
understand that.
like legitimately extensive. And if you watch my podcast, it's me giving my opinions on what we're watching and how I feel, but also me telling you every detail because for me and the ADHD, I can't filter out what's maybe important and what's not.
I get
So
it.
the whole time I'm just like, and then guess what happened? And if I try to move ahead, I'll be like, well, they don't have this tiny little detail, so I got to give them this. You can't just go around not knowing what kind of shirt she was wearing. So,
Well, I'll have to
um,
watch that because I was wondering what kind of shirt she was wearing. But no, I know exactly what you mean.
yeah. To be fair, she is wearing the same shirt I'm wearing, basically like the same
Oh,
design
yeah,
type of shirt.
right,
Because another element of my podcast is that I do try to cosplay as much as I can for it. So like for the Twister and Twisters episodes, I've got like that ribbed shirt, that both of them are wearing that like they mean business. I'm wearing a onesie that's like that flight suit, like that jumpsuit that they
right.
have on. You can't tell because I have a desk, so you can see the shirt. It gets the point across. But like, I also made sure to not wear any makeup at all for either of those because, as far as I could tell in Twister, it doesn't look like Joe puts on makeup, and that makes sense. She's busy. She's
Yeah,
chasing storms. She
that's
doesn't have
right.
time
Yeah,
to glam up.
I think you're
And
right.
Daisy, I mean, I'm sure they're wearing makeup. They've
Right.
got
But yeah, Joe
something,
would not be the type that would stop and be like, okay, well, hold
right?
off on that twister. I need to put on some mascara
Right.
or
And so
whatever.
for both of those episodes, I'm wearing like absolutely no makeup. I'm wearing the outfits. Kate, which is Daisy Edgar Jones's character in the new movie, she tends to wear like the same, like that ribbed tank top shirt, but like with something over it a couple of times. Or also she wears the onesie. So I did that. I just put
Well, that's
an
fun. You really
over
get
shirt.
into it.
I do because I do the outfits, but I also will do some sort of food from the films or
I
TV
was going
shows.
to ask you about that because we talked about that prior to the show,
Yes.
and I just want to tell folks too. Even though we're talking about the podcast, about Candace's podcast, I only watched a little bit of a couple of the episodes so far because I have not seen Supernatural, and
Mhm.
I keep meaning to. I watched like the first two episodes a couple of years ago, and I was like, okay, I could see myself getting hooked on this, but I think I was actually intimidated by how many seasons there were. I'm like, okay, I've got other things going on in my life right now. It was a chaotic time, so I'm like, I'm gonna wait till I have more time to watch this.
Oh,
But
and I spoil everything. So you have to you have to have already watched it or be okay with spoiling stuff. So just so you know, like for anyone.
but let's get back to the
Like,
food. You say you do
oh
food.
yeah. So my whole thing is that because I love pop culture so much, or like, TV, movies, books, I want fan service. I want you as the fan of whatever it is, and Supernatural has like fans, or like
Yeah,
for me,
yeah,
I
they
am
do.
a fan of Twister. I want you to know that I'm on that level with you, that I
Yeah.
care, that I paid attention to those details, and that's part of what matters. So, like for Twister, can you remember the meal that they have in Twister?
In the first movie?
Yeah,
Um,
Twister
oh yeah, at Aunt Joe's, or not Aunt Joe, at Aunt
at
Meg's
Meg.
place. Oh my
Hmm.
gosh. I don't. I remember there being meat.
Of course.
Oh wait, of course, of course. It's beef, and there's a reference to her not. You didn't see any cows out front, did you?
Yeah, one of the
Yep.
best times that's Alan Rick's character where he
So
goes,
did you
"Where'd you get all
slay a
that?"
cow for your podcast episode, or?
Oh, well, yeah. I mean, I just took it out back. Nobody in this city minds at all, and I like it rare anyway, so it didn't matter. No, but the meal is steak and potatoes.
Oh,
They
nice.
have rolls and with Aunt Meg's famous gravy. And so
Yes,
I did steak and mashed potatoes with
I
the
love
brown
that.
gravy. Um, I'm still mastering how to eat on camera, which is right now that I'm just not. I'm basically going like, here's my meal. And then I talk and then I'm like, I'm gonna eat now. Goodbye. So because it feels very awkward to try to eat
Yes, it
and do it. But
it
yeah, I
does.
got myself a nice little steak and then the potatoes. The
Nice.
only thing I missed was the rolls, and that's just because I didn't feel like baking rolls. Um, it's very hot right now. I don't feel like having my oven on.
Totally
Um,
understand.
and then that's another reason why when I watched the Twisters for the second time, I made sure to like take a note of the different foods that they had so that I could have that meal also be proper.
Well, that's fantastic. I'm looking forward to seeing that. And since we keep bringing up twisters, plural, why don't we start talking about this new movie that just came out? It was released in mid-July of 2024, in case you're watching this sometime off in the future. And that is it for part one of the Twister and Twister show with Candace Estelle. Part two will be available very, very soon. And when it is, I will include a link to it in the notes for this episode. In the meantime, I hope you will check out Candace Estelle's great Binge It Babes podcast and maybe check out some earlier episodes of the Gotta Pop show. So I thank you for watching or listening to this episode, and I hope you have a fantastic day. Enjoy.